In 1951, a psychologist named Solomon Asch did an experiment to see how people were impacted and influenced by other people. So what he did was he got a group of 8 people, he brought them in a room, and he showed this group of 8 people a picture with 3 lines on it. He then showed this group of 8 a second picture with a 4th line. And then he simply asked them which line is the same length as the 4th line. Like which of these 3 lines is the same length as the 4th line? Super simple, right? I would argue even a caveman could do it. Yet what we don't know is that the first 7 of the 8 people in this group were actors. And they were instructed to intentionally pick a wrong line to see what the last person, the 8th person, would do. Would they conform to the group and pick the wrong line? You see what ended up happening is they did all the experiments, all these different workups, and 75% of the 8th people conformed and picked the wrong line at least one time. 75%. Just so we know, they also did the experiment without any actors, and only 1% picked the wrong line then. If you would pray for that 1%, by the way, they need some help. But to be very, very clear, there's a 74% difference, and the only thing that changed was there was a group that impacted them. There was a group that influenced the 8th person to conform and pick the wrong line. Random fun fact, all the people in the experiment were all men. Enough said, right? Women would never be so easily swayed by a group of random lying people. But truthfully though, after all the experiments, they interviewed this 8th person and they just asked, why did you pick the wrong line? Why did you pick the wrong line? The 2 main answers they were given, the first answer they were given, they simply wanted to fit in with the rest of the group. They wanted to belong. And then the second answer, which I found fascinating, they assumed that the group of people were more informed than they were. Even though it was crystal clear what was right and what was wrong, they just assumed that the group of people were more informed than they were. Here's what I want us to know. You and I, we are influenced by others. Other people influence us, and not just kind of sort of influence. We are majorly influenced by the people around us, specifically when they say and do the same exact thing. We are wired to go with the group. You and I, we are wired to go with the group, and there's actually a term for this. It's a thing called mob mentality. Mob mentality, which is what we're going to focus in on and look out and talk about today. Before we continue on, though, I just want to say welcome. My name is Adam. I'm one of the pastors here. We are overjoyed that you've decided to come and worship with us here, whether in person, online, at a campus, at a network church, on iTunes, on YouTube. However you are hearing my voice right now, know that we are just overjoyed and excited that you've decided to come. Right now, we are in a series where we're looking at all the crazy things that are happening around us, all the craziness in our world, the things that make us want to say, what in the world? Like, what in the world is happening? What is going on? And so this is the name of our series, What in the World? And today is week 2. And once more, we're going to focus in on this thing called mob mentality. And before we start, I think it's always helpful to give a definition just to make sure we're all thinking about the same thing, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And so what is mob mentality? Mob mentality is the tendency for people's actions or beliefs to conform to the group around them. Again, mob mentality is the tendency for people's actions or beliefs to conform to the group around them. Professionals will tell you that when we're a part of a group or a part of a mob, there's a few things that can and will happen. Professionals will tell you that you'll have a loss of self-awareness, that you'll have a loss of personal identity. You'll also experience heightened emotions, higher highs and lower lows, and behaviors that are clearly unacceptable to you will become more acceptable to you within a group. And get this, people will begin to feel anonymous within a group, and they'll begin to say things they would never say, and they'll begin to do things they would never do, all simply because of the group. They'll do these things while not feeling personally responsible for what is said or done, because they have convinced themselves that the responsibility now falls on the group and not on them individually. And so just to sum all this up, the mob, the group of people around us, can keep us from thinking for ourselves. And one step further, it can influence us to say and do things that we would otherwise never, ever say or do. Just to be honest, this scares the crap out of me. All week long, the more I've learned, the more scared I've gotten. But it's true, isn't it? One quick look at history, and you'll begin to see extreme examples of mob mentality over and over again. From the Salem witch trials to Nazi Germany, to different cults drinking different flavors of Kool-Aid. But more than just the extreme examples, which are easy to kind of brush aside, if you begin to look at our everyday, day-to-day lives, you'll see mob mentality there as well. Like mob mentality, it's how fashion trends are started. You see your friend wearing something or doing something crazy, and you start wearing or doing something crazy as well. Like, did anyone else back in the day have a rat tail? Anyone else pin the leg of their pants so it was tighter at the bottom? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, just Google 80s, 90s fashion, and thank you. You're welcome for enlightening you. Mob mentality, though, it's how things go viral online. Does anyone remember the ice bucket challenge? Like, who in their right mind would ever pour a bucket of ice over their head while they have a buddy recording all of it? And I just wonder how many of us who did the ice bucket challenge actually cared to learn anything about ALS, or maybe we simply did it because everyone else was doing so. But to be clear, this mob, though, was used for so much good. This ice bucket challenge ended up raising over $115 million for ALS. In high school and college, though, we called the mob mentality peer pressure. And I think every parent in the history of parenting has asked their son or their daughter, if your friend jumped off a cliff, would you jump off a cliff too? Well, it turns out that 75% of us absolutely would, It's crazy. Seriously, right now in our country, though, we have two very large mobs who get angrier and angrier by the day. Who are they? Democrats and Republicans. But honestly, mob mentality, it shows up in our workplaces. It shows up in our families, in our friend groups, on Facebook. I mean, did you hear what so-and-so did? I can't believe they did it. I knew it was too good to be true. I knew they were trouble. And one person shares the story with another person, and that person shares it with another person, and the story begins to grow and grow and grow, and within a few moments, a mob shows up with torches in one hand and pitchforks in the other, and we begin to march across town to that certain person's house. This is mob mentality. And just to say it, these are just a few examples. But when you actually begin to look for it, I promise you'll begin to see mob mentality everywhere. And some mobs are good, some mobs are bad, some mobs are neutral. But in all mobs, you'll see people conform their actions and beliefs to the group of people around them. When you begin to look for mobs, you will see mobs everywhere. And when I say everywhere, even Jesus faced a mob or two himself. And some of the mobs that Jesus faced loved him, and some of the mobs that Jesus faced hated him. At one specific point, Jesus was coming into the city of Jerusalem. We refer to this story as the Palm Sunday story, but Jesus, he was coming into town riding a donkey when just listen to what we're told. This is what happens. As Jesus rode along, the crowd spread out their garments on the road ahead of him. When he reached a place where the road started down the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd began to shout and sing as they walked along, praising God for all the wonderful miracles they had seen. Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace on earth and glory in the highest heaven. Again, all these people are excited. This mob shows up almost out of nowhere. They're laying their coats on the ground. They're praising Jesus. And this mob, it called for Jesus to be king. They called for Jesus to be king. And then, just 5 days later, we're told about another mob. Just 5 days later, after being called to be king, Jesus faces a very different kind of mob. If you don't know what happened over these 5 days, Jesus arrives in Jerusalem. He overturns a few tables. He yells at a few churchy people. And he ends up having this meal with some of his closest friends, this last meal. And we're told that after this last meal that Jesus is arrested. He's arrested and he's brought before one of the most powerful people at this time, a guy named Pilate. And Pilate questioned Jesus, but he didn't find Jesus guilty of anything. And so Pilate brings Jesus before this different kind of mob, this different mob of people that's filled with all kinds of folks. Some of them are religious leaders, but Pilate tells this mob that he finds Jesus innocent and that he wants to release Jesus. Well, in response to what Pilate has to say, listen to what takes place next. Then a mighty roar rose from the crowd, and with one voice they shouted, "Kill him." Pilate argued with them because he wanted to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him." For the third time he demanded, "Why? What crime has he committed? What has he done wrong? I find nothing wrong. I found no reason to sentence him to death, so I will have him flogged, and then I will release him." But the mob shouted louder and louder, demanding that Jesus be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate sentenced Jesus to die as they demanded. This second mob is angry. This second mob is upset, and there's a mighty roar of their voices. And this mob, it literally convinces this powerful Roman ruler named Pilate. They convince him to have Jesus killed. Don't miss this. The first mob called for Jesus to be king. And then 5 short days later, the second mob called for Jesus to be crucified. Again, this first mob called for Jesus to be king. They're laying their coats on the ground. They called for him to be king. And then 5 short days later, the second mob is calling for Jesus to be crucified. 2 completely different mobs. It's almost hard to believe, isn't it? Like, what happened? Like, how could things possibly change so quickly? I know for myself this week as I sat with this story, I just have some questions, like just a few, like where's the first mob now that Jesus is being called to be crucified? I mean, that first mob, they were just laying their coats on the ground and their palm branches on the ground before Jesus. And now 5 days later, where the HE double hockey stick are they? Like really? Where did they go? And an even bigger question that I have, were some people in the first mob also in the second mob? Were some of the people in both mobs? Like did they turn on Jesus that quickly? They went from praising him to 5 days later calling for Jesus to be crucified? Were some of the people in both? Again, mob mentality, what is it? It's the tendency for people's actions and beliefs to conform to the group around them. As humans, it's almost hard to come to terms with, isn't it? But you just look at these 2 mobs, and it just becomes so clear that we are so quick to follow the crowd, aren't we? And they're quick to listen to what random people have to say. They just assume that the group of people is more informed than they are. And sadly, when you look at these 2 mobs, people are two-faced. And one moment they'll say this, and the next moment they'll say that. Again, I just want to ask, were some of the people in both mobs? I'm just guessing the answer is yes. And just to say it, if you've ever been at the center of a mob before, specifically a religious mob, there are few things worse. There are few things more horrible than being at the center of a mob. It's terrible. Here's the deal, though. I'm not sure that either of these 2 mobs that Jesus faced, I'm not sure either of them were great, godly mobs. The first mob, when you look past the surface, appears to be all hype. Everyone's excited and everyone's randomly joining in, and there's palm branches. And the second mob was just angry, and they got their pitchforks out, and they're just angry, and someone's going to get hurt today. Switching to 2020, just to say it, when you take a look around, and you look at culture, and you look at Facebook, and the election, and the racial divide, and the pandemic, even within a group of friends on your block, at your work, even within your church, these 2 very different kinds of mobs, some with palm branches that are excited and hype, some with pitchforks that are just angry. begin to appear. One step further, more than just seeing it in a culture, more than just seeing it in your coworkers, more than just seeing it in your one friend who's really naive and he just believes anything that she's told, more than in others, if you really begin to look for mob mentality, you'll begin to see it in yourself. If you really begin to look, you'll begin to see the times that your beliefs and your actions conform to the group of people around you. You'll begin to see the places that you're two-faced, the times that you were easily swayed. If you look back, you'll see the times that you were quick to praise someone, and then a few moments later, you were quick to try and crucify them. I mean, just think about the times that you believe something simply because you're conservative, and that's what conservatives, Republicans believe. Or you're progressive and you have no idea what you even think about a single topic, but you heard that an elected official who's also progressive believes that, and so hook, line, and sinker, that's what you believe as well. Or have you ever had a divide or a group of angry people, a mob you could say, show up almost out of nowhere at your work, at your church with a group of friends, and now you're mad at a certain person that everyone else is, your friend, your neighbor, your boss, your coworker, and it's like, when did we decide that we hate this person? Or more direct, when did I decide that I hate this person? And I'm not even sure actually what I hate about them, I just hate them. But weren't you friends with them? I hate them. But didn't you guys? I hate them. Just to say it to some degree, we all, myself included, folks, far from perfect, are a part of a mob or two or 10 of some kind. Our actions and our beliefs so often conform to the group of people around us. Once more, that's scary, isn't it? Honestly, it puts the fear of God in me. Like, it's so important to be aware of mob mentality. It's so important. And really today, I just have one question. Looking at your actions and your beliefs, are your actions and beliefs yours, or are they the mob's? Again, right now in your own life, the things that you're sharing, the things that you're angry about, the things that you're gossiping about, the things that you're so passionate about, you get worked up about, are your actions and beliefs yours, or are they the mob's? It's kind of a strange, weird question to ask, but it's so important. Like, why am I really upset about this? Am I actually upset about it, or am I just upset because other people are upset? And do I really believe this, or am I just kind of taking what someone else tells me to believe? Like, am I really this? And why? Once more, are your actions and beliefs yours, or are they the mob's? Just to say it, mobs are enticing. And mobs actually have a bunch of different things that they can offer us. Mobs offer us a cause. They offer us a purpose, acceptance. They can give us an outlet for our aggression. Oftentimes, a mob, it deeply connects us to others. It's really, really strange. You can strongly dislike a person, but if you both hate the same person, you can somehow become BFFs together. A person can annoy the crap out of you, and yet if you hate the same thing or the same person, all of a sudden you love to sing Kumbaya together. Just to let us know, if we have friendships where the only thing that unites us is our hate for a same person or our hate for a certain topic, that's a bad, toxic, I'm going to even say this, evil friendship. If the only thing that unites you is your hate for a same person, Jesus would say, evil. Again, mobs offer us these different things, but what? What are we really looking for in these different situations? What are we really looking for in life? We're after the truth, aren't we? We want the truth. And yet, bizarre enough, the truth is often the very thing that gets twisted in a mob. Thankfully, Jesus has a lot to say about the truth. Jesus says the truth will set us free. Jesus says that we should seek and know the truth. But at one point, Jesus says something really, really crazy. And he says, I am the truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the truth. That's a bold statement, isn't it? And today I would argue that for all of us, Jesus is telling us more than ever in a time when there is so much information being thrown our way, at a time when everyone and their mom has an opinion, at a time when we are quick, particularly quick to grab our palm branches and our pitchforks, at a time when so many people are quick to conform to the mob, when everything inside of us just wants to say, what in the world? At this time, more than ever, Jesus is saying, seek the truth. Seek me. I am the truth. I don't just offer the truth. I am the truth. Seek me. Conform your actions and beliefs to me, not to the mob. Conform to me. Today, if there's one thing, if you forget everything else, don't miss this. If there's one thing that I want us to grab onto, to take home, is this: conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mob. Conform your thoughts. Think for yourself and conform to Jesus. Conform your actions to him. When the mobs get excited, conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mob. When the mobs get angry, conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mobs. The next 2 months, as things get crazier towards this insane election, conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mob. When you read the next story on Facebook and everybody and your mom is sharing it 5 times, Mom, I love you so much, conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mob. When a mob shows up in your family randomly, at your workplace, in your church, whatever, 2 or more are gathered, conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mob. So how do we do it, right? How do we conform to Jesus and be cautious of the mob? How? Well, sure, we can talk with our friends who love Jesus. Absolutely. So important. And sure, we can listen to messages from pastors. Fantastic. Sure, we can read books from Christians and read what others have to say. So good, so important. But even with me, folks, even though I'm a pastor, I'm also a human that's impacted by the mobs. And so it's good to even be slightly cautious of what I say. You see, thankfully, we have 4 different accounts. 4 different people who wrote down their personal accounts with Jesus. 4 people: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Big churchy word, we call these 4 accounts the Gospels. And these 4 Gospels, these 4 accounts are found in what we call the New Testament, which is often found inside of something we call the Bible. And basically, in order to conform to Jesus, we need to know who Jesus is. We need to read these 4 accounts. We need to know what Jesus believed. We need to know how Jesus acted if we hope to conform to him. And I don't know about you, but it's so easy for me to watch the news. And it's so easy for me to read the next Facebook post by another expert or another so-called expert. It's so easy for me to listen to random friends. It's so easy for me to listen to the mob. But just a confession, oftentimes I'm very slow to approach Jesus. Facebook post, it's like I lunge at it, share it before I even read it. In the same moment, I'm so slow to approach Jesus and ask Jesus what he has to say. I'm slow to approach him and just be quiet and just say, Jesus, would you speak? Because your servant's listening. I want to hear from you. Quick to go every place else except him. You and I, we need to spend daily time reading about Jesus every day. Not because we're studying for an exam to get into heaven, not so we have more information, so we can be the loud, know-it-all Christian at the workplace that everyone tries to avoid because we're so annoying. No, we need to read about Jesus. Why? So we can listen to Jesus. Why? So we can follow Jesus. Why? So we can be like Jesus. Why? So we can act like Jesus. Why? So we can live like Jesus. Why? Because we want the truth. We want to know Jesus, and Jesus says, I am the truth. So this means spending daily time reading these 4 accounts, and maybe it's just 1 chapter a day. Just 1 chapter a day from Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John that you just open up and read. Kind of cool. This last week I was able to spend time with a man that I have great respect for, a guy that I just look up to in so many ways. His name is Hal. And Hal's an older fella in my life that's literally being used by God to change so much of the world. Like right now through this pandemic, he's been a part of feeding 110 million meals to people in need through the pandemic. It's insane. When I think about someone who's conformed to Jesus, I think about Hal and I think about Convoy of Hope. And so this week when I'm sitting with him, I just said, hey, Hal, like what changed in you? Where did this come from, this idea of helping people and serving people? And he said, years ago in my 30s, one year I just decided that each day for a year, I was just going to read one chapter a day from the 4 accounts of Jesus. And so I did. Each day I'd open up my Bible. I'd just read the next chapter from one of the 4 accounts of Jesus every single day for a year. He said, when I got to the end of the year, I was no longer the same person. So much had changed. My focus, my priorities, like so much had changed. But just by reading the words of Jesus, my words and in Hal's mouth, his actions and beliefs were conformed to Jesus over that year. Awesome, right? Powerful. Goes on to be used by God in this amazing, amazing, amazing way. One chapter a day. For me right now, I'm personally reading through Mark's account of Jesus. Maybe for you, you start in John's account of Jesus or Luke's account of Jesus. If reading the Bible for you is scary, I get it. I can remember in college, I was just like, what am I reading? I have no idea what I'm reading. If you want assistance, only if you want assistance. A year ago, I created a simple devotional that goes through the book of Mark. It's 16 days long. You sign up. It's free. There's no weirdness with it. Sign up. And for the next 16 days, you get one email that walks through that one chapter of the day. If that's something that helps you, awesome. Go sign up. AdamWeber.com/Mark. Great. But start in Luke, start in John, start wherever you want to start one chapter a day. So important. You see, the truth is there will always be mobs. There's always been mobs and there's always going to be mobs, including in this fantasy land that we talk about a lot called 2021. There's going to be mobs in 2021 as well. I promise you they'll be there. And to some degree, you and I, myself included, we will all be a part of a mob to some degree, but it's so important to realize that we are a part of a mob. It's so important to realize that we are influenced, that we conform often our thoughts and our actions and beliefs to the people around us. And why is it so important for us to be aware of this? Because going back to this example, the mob that you're in, it might be wrong. Just to be more direct, your actions and beliefs might be wrong. No one in a mob usually typically just stops for 2 seconds and asks, are we walking in the right direction? Instead, we get in mobs and we just can't run to the directions fast enough. Like, so-and-so, absolutely. It's like we lose our minds. We don't just stop like for 2 seconds. Are we headed in the right direction? Are we sure about this and what they're saying about her? Because I've had a different experience with her my entire life. Like, is this true? Like, is this what Jesus has to say? You see, the moment we begin to follow Jesus is the moment that we choose to intentionally no longer conform our actions and beliefs to the mobs, but instead we conform our actions and beliefs to Jesus. The moment we say, yes, Lord, is the moment that we say, my actions, I want to look like yours instead of everybody else's. The moment we decide Jesus is Lord, that he's in charge, is the same moment where it's like, I love that I have some beliefs and I'd like to think that I'm fairly educated. And yet every time that we disagree, God, every single time we go with you. Every time. You get infinite votes. I get 0. And so every single time I'm conforming my actions, my thoughts, everything that I am to you. Conform to Jesus. Be cautious of the mobs. Let's pray. Gracious Father, Heavenly King, we come before you thankful for who you are. Thankful that you speak to us. I'm so grateful that you come and you speak to us in the topics and the things that we're actually wrestling with. I can remember as a kid, I grew up and it was like, okay, we're going to do this hour thing called church, which has no relevance to my actual life. And then I'm going to try to live in Jesus. You want to be in both circles. Like you don't want to be separated. Instead, you're just like, no, I actually want to be in every part of your life, not just your Sunday morning and the cute parts of your life. I want to be like in every single part of your life. So Jesus, I pray for all of us that are hearing my voice, how much could change starting with our own selves If we just one chapter a day, I just want to learn more about you, Jesus. I just want to become more about you, Jesus. I just want to listen to you a little more, Jesus. I want to just be a little bit more like you, Jesus. God, help us to conform to you, not the mob. Help us to be aware, cautious of the mob, not you. Lord, we love you. We thank you. We pray all these things in the name of Jesus. All God's people said, amen.